At the end of our last lecture, we were left with this slide, remembering that this picture is what? What is this picture showing us? Well, let's kind of read it. We know that we have a horizontal demand curve and the margin, and it's equal to the margin revenue curve. So we know that occurs only in perfect competition. We're indicating equilibrium at the point where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. So this picture is showing us equilibrium in a perfectly competitive market. Now, the question is, does this picture represent a positive, negative, or zero economic profit? Well, it's a trick question. There isn't enough information in this picture to make a judgment on whether there's a positive or negative profit. We need more information. All right, so we remember that profit maximization occurs where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Remember how you calculate profit. Profit is calculated where total revenue minus total cost. All right. So total revenue is found when you take price and you multiply it by quantity. So if you remember from geometry, an area of a rectangle is length times width. So in this picture, length times width is price times quantity. So this rectangle here, this large rectangle here, represents our total revenue. Now, if we had some way of representing total cost, well, we do. And you can see here that I've added in the average total cost curve. We know that total cost is average total cost times quantity, right? So the rectangle down here represents the total cost. So in a situation in which total revenue is greater than total cost, the difference between them two is this area in here, and that represents the profit that is made. So now we can conclude at equilibrium, and again, only point we're concerned about here, at equilibrium, if price is greater than average total cost, this firm is going to be having a positive profit. Now, how would we show a negative profit? Well, negative profit would occur if just the opposite happened. Again, do profit maximization, look at equilibrium, but now look at the difference here. Average total cost, and that would be the total cost, this large rectangle here, is larger than total revenue, which would be this rectangle here. So we can tell that a negative profit occurs where average total cost is greater than price. If this is the case, we now have a quandary. We have maximized our profit and it is negative. What do we do then? Well, obviously, our next choice is to minimize our costs. Now, what we do is going to depend on some other information that we need to have here. Our choice is, do we stay open or do we temporarily shut down? All right? If we stay open, we're going to lose this amount of money in here. All right. But if we temporarily shut down, what is that going to cost us? And that's what we need to understand. This is a short run analysis because we either have a positive profit or a negative profit. And remember, in the long run, can't have either one in perfect competition. So when we're working in the short run, we also know that we need to take into account our fixed costs. So let's see what happens when we do that. Now, interestingly, when we look at this, we're not looking at our fixed cost curve because most firms aren't going to know that. They're going to know their variable costs, right? But that doesn't stop us. If we add into this picture our variable cost curve, we can now find our fixed cost. How? Well, we know our average total cost minus our average variable cost is our average fixed cost, right? So this is our average total cost. At this quantity, we go up to the average variable cost curve, read average variable off. Now, average total cost is, average fixed cost is going to be the difference between average total and average variable. So this area in here is our average fixed cost. We multiply this area times quantity, which would be the area of this rectangle here. That would be our fixed cost. So the last possibility, I guess easy to guess, would be where you have a negative profit and you shut down. So what we see is our negative profit here, right? Where our this is our total revenue, price times quantity. Total cost is average total cost times quantity. So the difference between the two is this area here. Now, that's our negative profit. This area here, our negative profit is fairly large. So we have to find our average fixed cost. Well, the difference between our average total cost and our average variable cost is here, multiplied by quantity. It's the area of this rectangle here. So in this case, we see our average, our fixed cost is less than our loss. So in this case, we minimize our costs by shutting down temporarily, not permanently. And that situation occurs at equilibrium. We would have a negative profit and shut down if our average total cost is greater than our average variable cost, and that's greater than price. Again, I want to stress to you that positive and negative profits only occur in the short run because firms in the long run will have the option to change production functions, to do whatever they need to do to move to zero economic profit. Okay, so the graphs we've looked at so far have all been short run curves. What we need to do now is look at what would equilibrium look like if we had long run. How do you know you're in long run equilibrium? So here you go. Three things have to occur in order for you to know you are in equilibrium in the long run under perfect competition. The first is that you have to maximize your profit. And we know we've maximized our profit if we're producing at the point where our marginal revenue equals our marginal cost. The second thing that has to occur is that we have a zero economic profit. And in the slides we showed you just a moment ago, you had a positive profit if price is greater than average total cost. You have a negative profit if price is less than average total cost. So you know you have a zero economic profit if your average total cost equals your price. Now I've put SR here, short run, simply because I wanted you to understand that, that U shape with more of a pointed bottom is what we're looking at. Now, the third condition is there's no incentive for you to make any changes. Remember, the difference between the long run and the short run, besides being a time frame issue, is that in the long run, all inputs become variable. So you can change anything you want. And remember that long run average total cost curve is that one with the flatter bottom, the U that it looks like somebody sat on. So in order to have equilibrium in the long run in perfect competition, this is what your graph would look like. Now what I've done is I've given you the same information 3 different ways. I've given it to you in words, I've given it to you in the red formulas, and I've given it to you in a graph. So whichever way the information speaks to you, this slide is showing you 3 different ways of coming up with the same thing. Now remember, zero economic profit only occurs if you have freedom of entry and exit. As we go look at other market structures, 2 of them will have barriers to entry. So they could have a negative or positive economic profit in the long run. One of them will still have freedom of entry and exit. So in that case, it cannot have a positive or negative profit in the long run. But we'll come back to those. Let's look at those as we get to them. All right, that does it for perfect competition.